Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Security experts weigh in on government imposition of states of emergency. Attorney General responds to concerns about the SOEs. Later in sports, Jamaica secures bronze in the two-woman bobsleigh event at the North American Cup in Canada. I'm Shane Masters. Here are the details. We begin this afternoon with more reactions to the imposition of states of emergency in 7 of the 19 police divisions across the island. We have comprehensive coverage of a measure which took effect yesterday, beginning with mixed views from at least 2 security experts. Once again, the effectiveness of the states of emergency is being brought to the fore. On Sunday, Prime Minister Andrew Holness announced the imposition of the measure across 7 police divisions in a bid to cauterize the island's high crime rate. Security expert Robert Finzi-Smith believes the current measure will not have the desired effect, as before the Prime Minister made the announcement, persons on social media were already speaking about the imposition of the security measure. He says there's no doubt that criminal elements heard about the SOEs before they were declared. Another concern was the decision intelligence-based.
Who are we targeting? How many people have we fully identified as producers of violence and that we can put a name and are antecedent to? Because if we know definitively who we are looking for, then their departure from the areas targeted could work to our advantage.
For another security expert, Jason Mackay, he believes the detention mechanism under the SOE will be instrumental in holding onto criminal elements.
Well, that's a significantly effective mechanism. If you look on Jamaica's crime history, they had the Suppression of Crime Act, that it is commonly known, that was removed in 1994. It was after that crime statistics and crime control in general started to deteriorate, because a detention act where you can just arrest without having to face the court within 48 hours is a significantly powerful tool. So I guarantee you that type of power is very effective.
But Mr. Smith does not agree. He says there are too many things wrong in how the government is approaching crime and violence, such as crime targeting, which he says is wrong, flawed, and a scandalous use of scant resources. In the meantime, he says the use of a commission to look at and implement suggestions to deal with crime would ultimately be a waste of time.
Go and find out how many commissions we have had over the past 2 decades on anything. Go and tell me how many of them have completed their tasking. And of those that have completed their tasking, how many of their recommendations have actively been implemented? That should tell you in a nutshell my opinion of commissions.
Both men were speaking on Power 106's morning agenda. Meanwhile, the Attorney General is responding to concerns about the use of states of emergency as the country awaits the outcome of the government's appeal in the case of 5 men who challenged their detention under the SOEs. The court ruled that the detention of Everton Douglas and 4 others under the SOE was unlawful. The ruling also said the detentions were egregious, overstepping of the bounds of the power of the executive, in part because the emergency powers allowed the Minister of National Security to sign detention orders. The men were detained without charge for different periods ranging from 177 days to 431 days. Marlene Malahoo Fort says the case regarding the detentions did not rule the state of emergency unconstitutional. She says the issues that were raised in the case were subsequently addressed and passed by both houses of Parliament.
I find it unfortunate that there appears to be, in a certain section of the public, almost a setting up of tension between and among the branches of government. And I'm not talking about legitimate questions being raised. And let me just say unequivocally, Mrs. Jackson-Miller, that this government is not deliberately taking any action in breach of the Constitution. But you do know that the actions of government will be reviewed by the courts, and in the process of review may sometimes be found in breach of the Constitution. But this is not the case in this particular case, where the court has said you cannot call a state of public emergency. The court is inquiring into circumstances under previous states of emergency in which persons were detained.
The Attorney General is being disingenuous. The amendments that were brought to the Emergency Powers Act really only corrected various referential errors, which arose when the 2011 amendments to the Constitution replaced the old Chapter 3 of the Constitution with the new Charter of Rights. So these were really referential errors. The substantive question about the constitutionality of detaining persons for extended period without charge would not have been addressed by this.
And the social anthropologist Dr. Herbert Gale is calling for more focus to be placed on primary interventions to tackle crime. Sandra Williams has that angle.
The return of the security measure is in response to an uptick in murders across the island. The SOE is expected to give law-abiding citizens a reprieve from the bloodletting in their communities and allow the police to target and remove crime producers from the spaces. But social anthropologist Dr. Herbert Gale believes more is needed for the crime-fighting tool to work. Dr. Gale says states of emergency are ineffective in solving crime if they are not accompanied by other violence reduction strategies. He says SOEs are only treating the symptoms of violence and not addressing the root cause.
What we are seeing in the region, and this is not just Jamaica, is that people are relying more and more on the SOEs, which is why some scholars, including myself, have described it as morphinization, meaning you go to a hospital, they give you the morphine, and the morphine kicks in, and you feel as if you no longer have a problem, but you still need the surgery. What is missing in the entire region is working on the surgery, which is a plan that everybody understands, a plan that is sold to the people, that is built on research, that we're going to do these 5-6 things to bring the violence down, which are separate from the suppression.
Speaking Sunday on Radio Jamaica's weekly news review program, That's a Wrap, Dr. Gale gave a breakdown of what should have been done before the implementation of the security measure.
The primary that you have to do is you have to look at what is feeding your violence. Lots and lots of people who are unemployed, lots and lots of people who are ready to be drawn into the pools of organized crime. You have to be shifting your money away from states of emergency and other suppression into those frames. And you need the research that shows you precisely where and how and when to do this.
Sandy Williams, TVJ News.
In other news now, changes have been made to the Trafficking in Persons Prevention, Suppression and Punishment Act. One of them includes the adding of prison time to certain crimes, as well as a $1 million fine for anyone who threatens or obstructs law enforcement from conducting investigations. Jamaica Maitland has the detail.
The Ministry of National Security says Jamaica's location continues to make it an ideal place for trafficking. Weaknesses at the country's border allows traffickers to carry out their illegal activities. It's why lawmakers want to give local laws more teeth to deal with the problem. So on Friday, the Senate passed amendments to the law to increase the fine for obstructing a trafficking-related investigation from $250,000 to $1 million. It also gave the National Security Minister the power to update the fines to reflect modern day. Fines were also removed for certain human traffic-related crimes to imprisonment.
This would mean a person involved in operating a trafficking organization as a body corporate could potentially hide behind that corporate veil and be charged a fine rather than being imprisoned. This was inconsistent with the amendments to Section 4, subsection 6, 7, 8, and 8A, where the option of a fine was removed. And so we are pleased that the Minister has brought Section 5 of the Act within those broader range of amendments.
The International Labour Organization says human trafficking globally generates an estimated $150 billion annually for players in the illicit trade. Citizens are lured into employment opportunities and other deals under the guise of a legitimate business. However, they are tricked into what may be a lifetime of slavery. Government Senator and trade unionist Senator Karen Gale says traces of human trafficking has been found in the agriculture, construction, and hospitality industries globally.
Asking for little or no work experience. They provide housing. They provide a travel opportunity. They provide visa and green card, and they lure individuals into this false expectation.
Very often, exotic locations and countries like Jamaica are seen as prime land and prime places for those who have their unfortunate intentions, that they seek places like Jamaica to express those. And our children, or women and children, are at particular risk.
The senators are urging the government to increase funding and public awareness to address human trafficking so citizens can easily identify and report related offenses. The United States Department's 2021 Trafficking Person Report, released in July, ranked Jamaica in Tier 2. It said the Jamaican government does not fully meet the minimum standard for the elimination of trafficking, but is making significant efforts to do so.
When we see it taking place, don't turn a blind eye. Try and do something. Make a report. Make a call. Say something to the police.
Jamila Maitland, TVJ News.
And it's time for a break here on the Midday News. Stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. Some councillors at the Clarendon Municipal Corporation have labelled the parish a disaster zone. They argue that the designation is justified because of the damage done to the parish's roads by heavy rain. They, however, argue this should not be the case months after the last significant weather system and are demanding attention from central government. Dwayne Anderson reports.
On Monday, motorists took to the streets to protest the condition of sections of the Maypen to James Hill Main Road in Clarendon. And on Thursday, it was the turn of their local government representatives to plead their cause.
The roads are in the deplorable state, Chairman. They are now, these potholes are now called craters. That's how big they are.
The councillors explained that many of the poor roads were worsened by recent heavy rains, and for them it is unacceptable that months later nothing has been done.
I'm seeking some urgent attention to Church Lane in Racetrack. When we had Idam Grace, that road is impassable until now. It has no work was done there. It has.
I'm disappointed that after the visit of the minister to the parish and the Prime Minister, to date, we are yet to hear from his ministry, both the Office of the Prime Minister and the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development as it relates to flood damage funding to rehabilitate these roads which were damaged from the passage of the last 3 tropical storms and last year from other weather phenomena. Chairman, it's terrible. It is terrible. I mean, the entire, not only Hayes and Rocky Point divisions, but if it was left up to me, I will do the entire parish a disaster parish. That's how bad it is.
They are therefore demanding immediate action from central government.
Our residents, our citizens are now of the view that we are doing nothing to ease the burden and the inconvenience that they are facing. But we have little that we can do, Chairman. We only receive what now? $3.5 million for road patching and rehabilitation. No, that's what we are now getting in terms of PRF, and that only can do $3 million, and that only can do little and no more.
Dwayne Anderson, TVJ News.
102 new cases of COVID-19 were reported in Jamaica on Sunday. The cases were confirmed from 1,708 samples, resulting in a positivity rate of 8.1%. The country's overall case count now stands at 90,311. The Ministry of Health says 2 more persons have died from the virus. This has increased the death toll to 2,329. In the meantime, 201 COVID-19 patients remain hospitalized, 14 are in critical condition, while 31 are severely ill. There are 26,506 active cases on the island. 253 more people have recovered from the virus, pushing the overall recovery count to 60,847. Fear and fright gripped residents of Sandy Bay in Hanover after a man died from injuries sustained when he fell into a gully this morning. The man has been identified only as Sasquatch, an elderly man in the community. According to residents, he was sitting along the gully rail when he lost his balance.
I passed him sitting on the bridge here early this morning, telling me that he's waiting on somebody to go and work with. And me leave him there and go over my yard just to come out now to come and deliver some money to one guy. Me see all the people looking at the gully and I say, what? I say a Sasquatch drop over in the gully.
When I go in the gully, I see him say, so try to lift me up and can't get up. So he turned to me and said to me, towards more alcohol, I said, burn me. Right? So really lift me up now and take care of the walk and he say in the gap. Yeah, shot at me, they kill him. Call the ambulance. And me don't go, I hope me dead. And me don't really say, nah, dead Sasquatch. Put your alcohol in nose in and near the alcohol. But he take care of the neck and then gone.
And for the latest in the financial world, here's Cody and Barrett with the Business Minute.
In business news, the Sugar Association of the Caribbean, SAC, is reporting that Jamaica, Guyana, Belize, and Barbados produced 198,000 tons of sugar for the 2020-2021 season. This was a substantial decline from the more than 300,000 tons usually produced, with over 200,000 tons typically exported to the United Kingdom and the United States. President of the SAC, Carl James, says he hopes the decision to apply the common external tariff to extra-regional imports of sugar will protect producers in CARICOM. It is estimated that more than 66% of sugar consumed in CARICOM comes from duty-free extra-regional sources. Close to $500 million of earnings is forecast to be pumped into the Jamaican economy. Minister of Tourism Edmund Bartlett revealed that with an additional 440 rooms unveiled by the H10 hotels in Trelawney last week, some 800 new jobs will be created and possibly 1,000 more guests. He said Jamaica could benefit from some $500,000 in earnings as a result of the expansion. H10 opened a second resort in Coral Spring, Trelawney for adults only, tagged Ocean Eden Bay. The official unveiling is scheduled to take place on December 9. And that's it for the Business Minute. I'm Cody Ann Barrett.
And it's now time for the top regional and international stories with Sandy Williams.
In the region, as Cubans prepare for peaceful protests on Monday, one key opposition activist is being blocked from participating as the government cracks down on dissenters. Cuban plainclothes, the police, and government supporters prevented him from leaving his apartment. They've also prevented journalists from going to talk with him.
The Cuban government has taken buses like this one to close off the streets. There are police everywhere. And there, in the distance, you can see a group of men, government supporters, perhaps police themselves, hanging flags over Junior Garcia's window.
Other activists and government critics on Sunday said they were also being blocked from leaving their homes. Cuban officials had denied permission for the march, claiming it is a pretext invented by Cuban exiles. They've also said the U.S. government wants to use rising tensions in Cuba as an excuse to invade the island. On the international scene, in the United Kingdom, an explosion outside Liverpool's Women's Hospital on Remembrance Sunday has been declared a terror incident by police. A taxi exploded and was engulfed in flames just before 11 o'clock at a drop-off zone near the entrance, killing the passenger and injuring the driver. 4 men have been arrested in the city under the Terrorism Act. And those were the top regional and international stories. I'm Sandy Williams.
We head to a quick break. When we come back, we'll have your midday sports report. Simon Preston is standing by.
Welcome back. It's now time for Midday Sports. I'm Simon Preston. The Jamaican pair of Jasmine Finletta-Victorian and former track athlete Audra Segree combined to secure bronze in the two-woman bobsleigh event at the International Bobsleigh and Skeleton Federation IBSF North American Cup in Canada on Sunday. Finletta-Victorian and Segree produced 1 minute 50.24 seconds to place third behind the Canadian team of Alyssa Rissling and Eden Wilson, who copped gold in 1 minute 49.41. This was their third race of the season after finishing 4th and 4th respectively. They currently sit in the top 7, which is needed for qualification to the Winter Olympics. The Jamaicans are trying to qualify for back-to-back appearances at the Winter Olympics in the two-woman bobsleigh in Beijing 2022 after Finletta Victorian and Kari Russell placed 19th overall at the 2018 edition in Pyeongchang, South Korea. To cricket we go now, as all of West Indies' group stage games at the Cricket World Cup qualifiers will be played at the Old Hararians Sports Club in Zimbabwe. The venues for these matches were announced on Monday, which will see the Caribbean side opening their account on November 23 against Ireland. The West Indies will face Sri Lanka on November 27 before closing out the group stages on November 29 against the Netherlands. The top 3 teams from this group will advance to the Super 6 stage of the competition. The top 3 teams in the Super 6 will qualify for the 2022 Cricket World Cup, which will be hosted in New Zealand in March. To football now, as reggae boy Kemar Roof will be taking instructions from former England forward Jermaine Defoe, at least on a temporary basis at Rangers FC in the Scottish Premier League. Defoe, who is still a registered player at the club, will take charge of managerial duties as the club are still working on a full-time replacement at the club. Defoe takes charge from Stephen Gerrard, who left last week to take up the managerial position at Aston Villa in the English Premier League. Defoe's first game in charge will be against Hibernian in the semi-finals of the Scottish League Cup on Sunday. And finally this afternoon, a 7-time Manning Cup winners Excelsior will be searching for their first win of the 2021 schoolboy football season as they face the Noon Technical this afternoon. Kick-off is at 3 o'clock. In another 3 o'clock kick-off, St. Jago will battle Jonathan Grant. At sports time, it was 0-0 between Jose Marti and Camperdown and 0-0 between Tivoli High and St. Andrew Technical. And that is it for your Midday Sports Report. I'm Simon Preston. Ashane, it is over to you.
Thanks, Simon. And just before we go, tomorrow it's the Reggae Boys versus the USA. Your prediction?
Yes, fans are back in the stands, 5,000 of them. Prediction, Jamaica won, the United States won, but we need 3 points. That's what we need.
And where would we sit in the World Cup qualifiers?
Well, we're currently 6th now, but with a victory, it could carry Jamaica as high as 5th in the table. So still some work to be done, but a win would give us momentum.
All right, thanks, Simon. And that's the Midday News. I'm Shane Masters. Join us at 7 for primetime news. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, good afternoon.